In today's tutorial, we're going to be talking about what's really causing your lower back pain. This comes from conversations that I have with many people about lower back pain, and they don't seem to realize how, let's just say, simple the answer is. They think that there's a problem with their body and there's there's no recovery, there's no rehabilitation for that. But what you're going to find is that there is in some respects, quite a simple answer. It doesn't mean it's easy to correct, but it just means it's a simple answer. And that is what I would describe as the real cause of most lower back pain. So that's important that it's most lower back pain, because there are instances where there are genetic factors that can take over. But for the most part, it's movement quality and movement quantity. So that's poor movement, poor technique, poor posture, poor exercise technique, so on and so forth. And then you've got the movement quantity, which is just moving too much without adequate recovery, which again is important, because you do have people that do a lot of exercise, professional athletes being one of them. They move a lot, but what they do much better than most is they recover. And these are sort of conversations that I have with a lot of people when I do my online coaching, when I do my sort of one-to-one face-to-face coaching, is how much they are moving and how much they are, or how poorly they are moving. Now, they don't think it's something that is as simple as that, because essentially what I'm saying, if we can correct how someone moves and how much someone moves, and then putting in the adequate recovery, rehabilitation, whatever it needs, we can then overcome lower back pain. So that answer is quite simple for people, and people don't believe that that's the truth. They think, oh no, there's a problem with my body, it's never going to get better because that's what someone else has told me. I tend not to go down that road. From the practical experience that I have with people with lower back pain and the research that I've done with lower back pain, you can generally trace it back to a poor movement. So if we take something like spine flexion, so with regards to poor movement, it flexes the spine. That is a recipe for disc bulge, disc herniation. So when someone comes to me with that type of problem, then there are sort of movement therapies or exercise therapies, whatever you want to call it, that we can put in place to rehabilitate that spine, to make it better, and then they'll go about their life with a much reduced risk. I can't ever say that they'll never get it again, because that would be unrealistic of me. But we can certainly reduce risk, and we can make a much healthier spine. So that's sort of the first part. So that would be like the poor movement part of it. So you lift something off the floor and the back goes. What we've then got is too much. So if we are, I don't know, a bricklayer, or we are moving house, we're putting stuff in boxes, taking out a box when we get to the new house. So there's a lot of like lifting, bending, carrying, and all that kind of stuff. That just very simply can just fatigue the tissue. So it just leaves them more vulnerable to injury. Now that could be just the spasming of muscles, that could be a micro movement in the spine, that could be a disc bulge, could be a disc herniation, so on and so forth. So there's many things that it could be. But what it all stems from, which is the real problem, is the movement. So again, if we can correct that movement, get the balance of movement, exercise or sport and recovery in the right balance, we're going to go a long way to improving that. We've then got spine extension. When we're overextending the spine and we're doing a lot of it, we're putting pressure on the facet joints of the spine, and we are potentially involving the discs within the injury as well. And then another common movement is rotation. Rotation of the spine will then delaminate the spine. So you've got rings, so you've got a jelly-like fluid in the middle of the disc, and then you've got all these fibrous rings around the outside. They become separated. That's delamination, and the fluid then finds its way through much easier to then go about herniating or bulging eventually. So those three types of movement can be sort of stemmed all the way back to poor movement. Those types of injury, like flexion-based injury, like a disc bulge or a disc herniation, they can be stemmed back to a movement cause, let's say. And as I've mentioned, with regards to the poor movement, what that's doing to the spine and to joints in general. So this could be common in the ankle, could be the knee, could be the hip, could be the spine, could be the shoulder, could be the elbow. Because as I was investigating and learning more about injuries, there was a pattern coming out. And one of them was if you put a joint, or if you misalign joints when you're squatting, for example, so your knee keeps caving in, that puts unnecessary additional stress on that joint. If we can line it up, there is still a stress going through it, but it's let's just say the right amount for the task being done. If it goes out of alignment, it puts excess, additional or unnecessary stress. That then goes and speeds up the mechanism for an injury. And that happens in the Achilles tendon, for example. A lot of people think tendon ruptures are just one movement, one time, and the tendon snaps. But what's been found is there are what's called microtraumas within the tendon, and then eventually the straw breaks the camel's back and off it goes. Now that's similar to what's happening in the spine, the straw that breaks the camel's back. So if we're constantly doing it, we create these microtraumas. They don't heal correctly, the tissues fatigue, and then eventually we get an injury. You can look at repetitive strain injuries. They're a similar thing. It's that repetitive nature. So that's if we're doing too much movement, but we've also got that poor movement as well. So you can now start to build a picture and use these general principles and apply it to the spine, because the spine is a joint like other joints are joints, and in some respects they will act the same. If you don't align them, there will be extra stress and pressure put on them. If you do align them, there will be a minimized stress put on them. That's the same in all joints. So what we need to be able to do is learn how to do that. And if we are using the correct technique and minimizing that, that will allow us to do more. But as I've mentioned, if we still keep doing too much, those joints will fail, even if we're using good, correct movement, because we're fatiguing the tissues. So we've got to get all of this into balance. So where it's a simple answer, as I mentioned at the start, there's a lot of variables that we need to get right, because then we've got joints influence other joints. So if you've got a poor ankle mobility, that's going to affect what's happening at the knee and the hip, so on and so forth. So we've got all these little intricacies that come along with it, but the main principle holds and is relatively simple in that we have, or in some ways to overcome this problem or to reduce this risk of back injuries, we have to move better, and we have to get adequate movement with adequate recovery, or enough movement with the right recovery, so on and so forth. So it's bringing this back into balance and allowing the body to heal itself before it then goes about doing more activity or exercise or poor movement or whatever it is, and I'll explain that in a second. With regards to movement, there are 101 different ways of all these different ways that we can move, but essentially I've broken it down into 8. We lift, we carry, we push, we pull, we get up, we rotate, we walk, and we run. So that is essentially what our body does. Now, how it lifts, it can lift in a traditional deadlift type way. We could lift with a wider stance, a narrower stance. We could lift a bit more from the knees. We could lift a bit more from one leg than the other. So we could have a bit more of a split stance. So there's all these different ways of doing it. But essentially, we lift, we carry, we push, we pull, rotate, get up, walk, run. So those are the movements that we need to improve, and there are some core skills that come along with that. All these types of things you learn on my online courses. So if you want to improve your movement, you go along to the How to Overcome Lower Back Pain course, and you can learn that. So it's not just like a very scientific, technical type course. It's a very practical, very everyday type course, because I'm teaching you how to move. I'm teaching you how to improve what are those potential causes for back problems. There are assessments and questionnaires to help identify your lower back pain, so you know a little bit more specifically about your lower back pain. That's all in there as well. So there's all these different parts that come along with it. But essentially, those are the 8 movements that we need to improve. So what we are really focusing on is to reduce lower back, or to reduce your risk of lower back pain, is to move better and to move and recover in the right ratios, essentially. So not only if you want to minimize your risk of it happening in the future because you've never had it, you would do the same. And also, if you have lower back pain, yes, there are certain things that you will need to identify that make it specific to your lower back pain. And again, you can do that on my online course, or you can do it on my online one-to-one coaching. We can have that conversation and we can go through that. But essentially, if you have lower back pain, you need to learn how to move better, and you need to learn how to sort of recover adequately with regards to the movement that you're doing. So, sort of going all the way back full circle, as I mentioned at the start, the real cause of your lower back pain is poor movement and too much movement. So the solution to that problem is better movement, so better posture, better exercise technique, better everyday movement, and recovering adequately, sleeping, getting a massage, eating properly, resting in general. So taking a step back, stress management, all these different types of things are putting unnecessary stresses on the body that need to be addressed. And again, all of that is in the lower back pain course that you can do online. Where most people think their lower back pain is something wrong with their spine, so something wrong with the discs, something wrong with the vertebra, something wrong with the nerve, something wrong with the muscle, that can always be traced back to a movement habit that someone has had, or a movement tendency that someone has, or a posture that someone has. So if we can rein that in, bring that back, it's going to be much more effective to overcoming your lower back pain. So I could go round in sort of circles explaining and reinforcing that, and I've probably done that enough. So I guess to summarise on the final part, the real cause of your lower back pain, poor movement and too much movement. So the solution to that is better movement and recovering adequately. So hopefully that's been help. Hopefully that's given you a better idea of some of the things you need to do. Again, go to the link below and we'll be able to set you up on either one-to-one online coaching with me, or we can get you on the online course where you could start learning about this for yourself. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. I will speak to you in the next tutorial.